We are going to review today how to round decimals. We are going to start with whole numbers as a reminder that we don't really need to use any different strategies when we are rounding numbers. So the first thing you need to do is listen to the directions and identify the place value that you'll be rounding to. In this case, we are rounding to the hundreds, so I am going to underline my hundreds place value. The next step is that every place value to the left of that place value remains the same. So I can rewrite my 68,000. We then need to analyze whether or not the underlined place value will remain the same or if it will round up. We look to the place value to the right, the lesser place value, to decide. If it is 5 or below, the 7 remains the same. If it is 5 or up, then it will round up. In this case, we have a 3, so my 7 remains the same. And the last step is that all the remaining place values become a 0. Remember that your rounded number should be a simpler version of the original number, but still very close in value, which we can see it is. We are going to use these simple 4 steps to round decimals in the same exact way. We do not need to change any of our language. We do not need to change our approach in any way. Looking at the number 73 and 492 thousandths, we are going to round it to the nearest whole number. When you see the language whole number, that's the same as saying to the ones place to make it a whole number with no decimal. So our first step is to underline the place value we are rounding to, and in this case that would be the ones, so I'm underlining the 3. Step number 2, every place value to the left stays the same, so my 7 for 70 will remain the same. We then need to look to the place value to the right to decide whether our 3 is rounded up or if it stays the same. And 4 is a number that tells us to remain the same, so my 73 will stay. And every place value to the right becomes a 0. So I could write my answer as 73.000, or the simpler way, 73. My number is rounded to the nearest whole number, and I'm still going to check 73 makes sense with my original number. Here we have another example, 42 and 6,874 10,000ths. Doesn't matter that our decimal is getting longer, we're going to follow our directions. Underline the place value we are rounding to. In this case, it's the hundredths, so I'm going to underline my 8 in the hundredths. Every place value to the left stays the same, so my 42.6 will remain the same. Use the place value to the right to decide if it rounds up or stays the same. To the right of the 8, we have 7. 7 is 5 or above, which tells me to round that 8 up to 9. And step number 4, every place value to the right becomes a 0. Both of these answers would be correct versions for rounding. Here you have 3 examples. Please pause the video and on a scrap piece of paper solve these. When you play the video, I will just be giving the answers. I will not be providing any explanation, but just the answers for you to check. So pause the video now. At this point, I am showing you the answers. 68 and 42 hundredths rounded to the nearest tenths would be 68 and 4 tenths. 374 and 4,128 10,000ths rounded to the hundredths would be 374 and 41 hundredths. And 62,549 hundred thousandths rounded to the thousandths would be 625 thousandths. You may notice when you read your answers that the last place values you say should be the place value you rounded to. 68 and 4 tenths, 374 and 41 hundredths, 625 thousandths. That is another way of checking your answer.